and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Fighter's Echo Knight class specialization from the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount supplement, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. An Echo Knight is a fighter subclass that makes use of a form of magic called dunamancy, which allows these kinds of fighters to unlock the potential of the past, future, and present choices associated with the character. This potential creates an echo, quote-unquote, that represents what could have been, or what might be, while the character themselves represents what the result of a given choice is. This echo provides many offensive and defensive possibilities, as well as a means to reconnoiter and otherwise take advantage of all those past, present, and future events into a coalesced moment in time, giving the character many useful features. Now, fighters are one of the classes that waits until level 3 before they choose their class specialization, called a martial archetype. This means you as a player will spend some time with your character before applying a given subclass, potentially leading you to this particular class specialization. To help us out, I've already created a level 2 character and prepared that character for level 3, which I'm going to apply now, simply by dragging and dropping this icon over the word Fighter 2. I'm also going to make sure that I choose Echo Knight and apply that specialization. The first feature your character will receive is called Manifest Echo, which allows your character to create a shadow-like echo of themselves as a bonus action. This echo will appear within 15 feet of where your character currently stands, of which the space itself must be unoccupied and is visible to your character. This echo will last until one of the following conditions are met. The first is that you choose to dismiss the echo, which will also use a bonus action to do so. The second is that your echo is destroyed, be it through an attack, or it has moved beyond a 30-foot range from your character, and your character has chosen to end the turn with their echo past that particular range. The third is if you choose to create another echo, at which point at this particular level, you will end up dismissing the first echo. And finally, if your character happens to be killed or otherwise incapacitated. For all intensive purposes, however, it is a translucent copy of your character, but there are going to be some subtle differences. The first is that it's only ever going to have one hit point. This cannot change, and I do not even believe that you can apply temporary hit points to it. Initially, your echo is going to have an armor class of 14 plus your character's proficiency bonus, which at this particular level is going to total 16. As your character's proficiency bonus increases, so too will the armor class, so you're going to have to take that into account as your character levels up. Additionally, this is not going to ever acquire your character's dexterity bonus, so the only values you're going to be able to apply is the base value of AC 14 plus your character's proficiency bonus. The next difference is that the echo is going to be immune to all conditions. This is something your own character cannot claim. Additionally, when your echo is required to make a saving throw, they're going to be able to make use of any and all bonuses that are currently applicable to your own character's saving throws. For example, here with the strength stat, we currently have a +4 bonus here. In addition, we have our proficiency bonus of +2. That means that if our echo is required to make a strength-based saving throw, they would gain a +6 to their saving throw. Now, once the echo itself has been created and is currently on the field of battle or whatever location you currently have it positioned in, you will be able to move that particular echo at will. It is essentially a free action. It's not going to cost you any particular portion of your own movement or anything like that. It's not going to take an action to command, and it is also not going to make use of a bonus action to do so. Which means that at the time that you create it, you can have it move 30 feet right off. But keep in mind, if you make it go outside of a 30-foot range for your character, it will destroy itself at the end of your particular turn. So be careful on that. Having said that, there are a number of ways that you can make use of this particular echo. An example of that is the first would be that your character can swap their place with the echo by utilizing 15 feet of your character's own movement to do so. Your character will instantly teleport to where your echo's position currently is, while the echo itself will teleport back to where your character initially was. The distance between your echo and your own character is immaterial to the teleportation capability, such that if you choose to move the echo past the 30-foot range and then swap places with it, it will only cost the 15 feet of movement. But it will be destroyed if you do not move closer to it to ensure that it remains within 30 feet of your character at the end of your character's turn. Another thing that you can do as part of an attack action is you can choose to manifest the attack through your character's echo, or through your own character, and each attack is going to act independently. For example, when your character acquires the extra attack feature, you can choose to have one attack come through your character, but the second attack come out through your echo. It doesn't really much matter, and you can do that in any order. You could choose the echo first and then use your own character. But there's also a bonus capability that you have with the echo that I'm going to explain in a minute. But first, I want to clarify a couple of points around this particular capability. In all respects, any attack that you use, regardless whether it's through your echo or through your own character, is going to make use of your attack and damage rolls, including any bonuses your character would normally gain as part of that action. And finally, as part of this particular feature, when a creature moves out of the 5-foot reach of your echo, you can have that echo make an attack of opportunity, just as if the creature had moved out of your own character's zone of influence. Once again, the attacks would appear through your echo, but using your own character's attack and damage rolls. But this does burn the use of your own character's reaction, as while the echo exists, it's essentially sharing your character's action capabilities minus the fact that it can move as directed, and not use your character's own movement. Unfortunately, because the echo is essentially a copy of your own character, this most likely means an NPC has not yet been created to represent that shadow. And while I see it being problematic to make use of, I will explain how that can actually be done. The first recommendation I have, and it's going to be the simplest of them, is to simply make a copy of your character sheet. Within Fantasy Grounds, all the DM has to do is export and then re-import your character sheet once again. Doing so is going to create an extra copy of your character, and I'll show this on screen here in a moment. It will make things a little bit easier, and then you as a player can actually select that particular character, and at the time you summon your echo, you just load that character into Fantasy Grounds. The second option would only come into play if your Dungeon Master happens to have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because they could theoretically make use of a sidekick, specifically a warrior sidekick class character, in order to create that copy of your character. The problem with that is it's not easy to assign to a specific player without doing some cross-sharing through Fantasy Grounds. And the third option is simply going to make use of Theater of Mind in relation to the concept of your echo, in the sense that there might be a token that can be applied to a particular map, but all it's going to do is utilize all of your character stats, with the exception of some of the things such as the hit points and things like that. As I have already explained the process of going through and creating a sidekick-based character, I'm not going to do that here, but I will provide links in the description below so that you can quickly go view them. I'm also not going to show the method of utilizing Theater of Mind, simply because that's very difficult. It's in your mind. But in general, what I will do is show how we can go ahead and create a copy of your character and set that up and get it ready to go so that it will act as your echo. And as you as the player will have ownership over this particular character sheet as well, in addition to your own character sheet, you'll be able to manipulate it and keep it in line with your existing character. So while you will have to manipulate two characters, it's definitely a lot more convenient than trying to figure out something in your mind and then forgetting something throughout the course of combat because it got really intense. So the first thing I'm going to state is that you should have all of the preparation work you need done and ready to go before you make a copy of your character sheet. So the steps that I'm going to do here are going to force me to duplicate things down the road a little bit more inconveniently. But I want to ensure that I include the concept of what you need to do in this particular section because it relates directly to the Manifest Echo functionality. So I've gone ahead and brought up the Dungeon Master screen. And this is going to assume that you have completed setting up your character for the first time. On that screen, I also have all of the characters loaded. Now, unfortunately, I literally have every single character I've ever done a tutorial for still in my character list, so it's a little bit on the long side. To help me narrow that down, I'm going to do this. I'm simply going to look for all of the fighters that I have covered so far for the tutorial series. In this particular case, this is our character here. Perfect. What I want to do is click this Edit List button. And as soon as I do that, we've got these two options that pop up. I want to export this character. I'm simply going to make use of an export that I've already done just to confirm that this process is going to work the way I'm anticipating it will. Once I do that, I now will have a copy of that particular character essentially on my system. Now, the next thing that I want to do is get out of this editing list because I don't want to accidentally delete that character. I then want to re-import that character. Now, initially, Fantasy Grounds is going to present to you a list of characters that you can select that it's quote-unquote aware of. I think this might be cross-campaign. So your Dungeon Master, if they're doing a lot of campaigns, might have multiple characters in this list. But that's not what we want to do in this particular case. We want to import it directly from the file. And we've already gone through and created our file. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And now we've got an imported copy of the fighter there. To confirm, I want to go back to the character selection screen and then look for the fighter again. And we can see here that we have our character that we've already gone through the process of doing the initial creation on. And we now have a copy of our character here, and it's owned by nobody. So now that this part is done, I'm going to switch back to the player side so that we can actually see what you as a player are going to have to do. Once the Dungeon Master has indicated they've loaded the character, you should be able to click on the characters button and you'll see, quote unquote, an empty copy of your character. I'm going to double click on that to import that, and then we'll get another copy of our character sheet here. I'm just going to reduce this so that I can keep it sort of in line with everything else that we have on the go here. Now, before I do anything else, I want to point out one thing. You will notice that up here, the naming convention is a little bit on the limited side in the sense that you can only see a limited number of characters. I highly recommend you rename your echo to something relatively short so that you can actually see what it is that represents your character versus what it is that represents your echo. In this particular case, I'm going to call it the echo. And that's just going to make things a little bit easier for me. I'm also going to make sure that I set up a specific portrait for it. Let's see. I'm going to go under Fantasy here. Give it a moment here. It takes a moment to load up. Yeah, this one will do. And that's mainly because to me, it looks like an ethereal concept of a character. And I'm also going to set up an independent token for that. I can do that by going to the Assets, Tokens, and unfortunately, I don't have any loaded, so that's going to be a problem. The Dungeon Master, however, can. So for now, I'm going to leave this as it is. But for all intents and purposes, it's mostly ready to go. The only thing we have to do is make sure that we modify the total number of hit points this character has to be a total of 1, and there won't be any hit die that come into play here. You can't remove them, though, because it's going to automatically go through and increment them each time you add a level to your character anyway. There is one thing I forgot to point out in relation to our echo when we were going through and setting it up, and that was the armor class itself. I forgot to set that up to be the proper value. Now, the problem here is you cannot modify this particular base value. What you can do, though, is simply adjust this so that this value here becomes a 4 to give you a total of 14, which is what the base armor will be. If you delete this because it's no longer applicable, you're not wearing a shield right now, and actually the rule doesn't state anything about a shield, so that'll be an interesting thing to deal with. We also want to eliminate the dexterity bonus. So you can see here that we now have a 14, but we don't have any of our bonuses in here because our proficiency score is not being applied here. Unfortunately, this proficient indicator here doesn't modify the armor class in any way, shape, or form. As you can see, it's not increasing. So what you actually will need to do is make sure that you modify this miscellaneous value here to represent the current proficiency bonus that your character has, specifically to the echo. And that is the only way that you can go ahead and ensure that the armor class is correctly configured. Now, normally you would not have this character loaded all the time. You would only load this particular character at the time that you summon your echo. But you will still have to load it enough to make sure that your character sheets are in alignment. So anytime you add an item to this particular character, you will also have to add that item to this particular character sheet. When you gain new features or add in a level, you're going to have to do the same thing here. So while you're essentially, quote unquote, doubling the work, I honestly believe this is going to be the simplest way to do this down the road. It reduces a lot of the complexity off of the Dungeon Master. It adds a little bit of complexity to you as a player, but outside of actually doing something within the campaign, you're going to help the DM out significantly by managing this on your own. Another feature that your character is going to gain or receive at level 3 is called Unleash Incarnation, which will allow you to make use of your character's echo to execute an attack from their location. Now, to do this, this has to happen during the main attack phase of a given turn. And at this level, your character does not yet have the extra attack capability, so you would normally make one attack. However, this feature now gives you the ability to execute a second attack, a limited number of times, mind you, during a particular attack phase. When you execute an attack during the attack action phase of your entire turn, regardless of if you hit or miss, this feature would allow you to essentially make an extra attack, but that attack is going to come from your echo. This feature can only be used, however, a number of times equal to your character's constitution modifier, before your character is going to be required to complete a long rest to regain any spent uses. In our example character here, we have 3 uses total. One thing to also note, though, that if your character at some point in the future, say due to a particular ability score improvement, decides to add new points to their constitution, then you'll want to make sure that you'll keep an eye open for a bonus increase. So if you change this to an 18 from the current 17, for example, you will gain a +1 to your constitution modifier, making it a total of +4. You want to make sure at that point that you adjust the number of uses specific to that feature. So let's go ahead and set this up. First thing I'm going to do is drag and drop this into our character's action sheet. I am then going to create a new group called Echo Knight. In this particular case, all I have to do is set up a number of uses. So our constitution is a +3 modifier in this particular case, so I've set up 3 daily uses. Before we get into showing how this particular functionality works, there's one thing I would like to point out for the Dungeon Master. If you've gone through and set things up for the player so that they have 2 copies of their character, I should say a copy of their character, so that they have their primary character and their echo, then what you are going to want to do is ensure that when they are added to the combat tracker, they always have the exact same initiative roll. Now, I went through and initially manually entered in the initiative roll here for the echo, but I'm going to show you a different method that you can use. After the player has rolled their initiative for their primary character, all you have to do is simply drag and drop that initiative onto the echo to ensure that they have the exact same initiative roll. Just makes things easier for you so you don't have to go in and manually enter it. Now, you as the player are going to have to manipulate things a little bit here in order to make things work. Even though you do have a character that may be added to the combat tracker, it's entirely up to the DM whether they're going to do that or not, because technically the echo shares your initiative roll. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the combat tracker. I recommend it is, so let everyone knows who's involved in the whole process here, but we'll see. In any event, I'm going to attack this vampire with my main character. In this particular case, it's a miss, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and declare that I've used an Unleashed Incarnation use. That's going to require me to pop open the attack sheet, or the action sheet rather, for the echo. Now, the echo, specifically you, is going to have a particular target that you're going to attack. I'm not going to attack the vampire in this particular case. Instead, I'm going to attack a 2 because that's the closest creature to the echo. To do that, all I have to do is drag and drop a dice on that particular ape. This is a hit, so I can now drop the damage onto that particular ape. And that all came from the echo, so you can see here that it's the echo that's making that attack. It's technically still your turn as a fighter, so you're going to want to switch back here to do anything that you might want to do as a bonus action. Or if you're done, or you're dealing with your movement, or you're moving your echo, it doesn't much matter. Because you own both of these particular characters, and as long as a map is open and has your token on it, you can move either or, okay? And yes, I realize I went into a bit of a tangent on movement, but I figured it was all part of this one explanation. So let's move on. Now, because this is the first time I'm showing an increase in our levels here, I'm going to do this on screen to ensure that you see how this should be done. So let's say our character is acquired fighter level 4. Well, you don't want your echo to fall behind when it comes to that. So you're going to want to make sure that you open them up and also drag and drop the level that you're going to apply here to this particular character. But there's one thing I would like to point out, and you may have caught it on your own. When you do that, the hit points specific to your echo are going to constantly increase. We will have to reset that each time this happens. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now. Now, the other thing that you will want to do each time your character levels up and this is going to specifically happen at level 5 first because I skipped that, I missed that unfortunately, is you will want to ensure that you modify your character's armor class to take into account the increase in points that you will acquire in relation to your proficiency bonus. So I'm going to increase that to a 3, and now our armor class is correctly set at 17 for our Echo. So this is actually going to happen at level 5, not at level 7, like I've unfortunately skipped through here. At fighter level 7, your character is going to gain the Echo Avatar feature, allowing your character to make use of their Echo to both see and hear in its immediate area for a period of up to 10 minutes in duration. To do this, your character essentially transfers their thoughts and consciousness into their Echo, meaning that your character themselves will be unable to see and hear, suffering both blindness and deafness conditions, while the Echo will see and hear fine. But your character would see as if they were physically within the Echo's body, as well as hear. When making use of this feature, the normal limitation where the Echo is unable to exceed 30 feet of distance from your character is temporarily removed, allowing the Echo to be able to travel up to 1,000 feet before they will otherwise be destroyed. In addition, because it is not restricted by either this feature or any other feature that I can see, it is potentially possible for you to make use of the teleportation capabilities such that your character can swap places with their Echo, even if they're 999 feet out. Ending the effect is instantaneous and requires no action to do so, but while this is not a feature that has something we would normally track through this action, I'm going to add this to our Actions tab to set up an effect to track the duration of the effect itself. So once again, we're going to go to our Actions tab, and I'm going to drop this into place. I'm then going to simply copy the Echo Knight group and assign it to Echo Avatar. I am then going to create a new effect. And in of that self, I'm simply going to do this. I'm going to modify that effect and simply put in Echo Avatar. Beyond that, I'm going to set up a duration, and it should be 10 minutes, as well as assign it to our character so that it can't be assigned to anything else. Now, when I go through and actually make use of this, I can simply click this effect, and it will tell me exactly how long this is going to come into play. And as I said, it is strictly there for tracking purposes, so this is not something that needs to be added to our Echoes Actions tab, because our Echo is never going to make use of this feature. And you may have noticed as well that I did not add Unleashed Incarnation to it either. And again, that's simply because it's something our Echo is never going to use. But before I do anything else, I also want to ensure that I'm tracking the deafened and blinded conditions of this particular feature on our main character. So I'm going to modify this and simply copy in the following. Echo Avatar, deafened, blinded. And the semicolon here is important because I'm chaining multiple effects together. I'm then going to remove this particular effect here and apply the updated version of that effect to our character. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want to ensure that the granting of disadvantage comes into play whenever the blinded effect is applied to our character. So I'm going to test that through an attack scenario. Now, I've gone ahead and set it up so that the vampire has our action token and they're targeting the Echo Knight. I'm then going to make an attack roll here. And what we should see is that it should get rolled with disadvantage, which we do. We see it here on our player side of the screen. That means that our condition is working perfectly fine. Now, the Echo itself is not going to gain those conditions. It's strictly only going to occur on our main character. And that's because we're using the Echo to actually see and hear through. At fighter level 9, we are going to need to ensure we update the armor class to our Echo because the proficiency bonus has gone from +3 to +4. In addition, I'm also going to make sure that I've reset the number of hit points there. So to do that, all I have to do is open up the magnifying glass modifier here, go down to our armor class and change this 3 to a 4. And that's everything that we need to do when it comes to updating our Echo's armor class. At fighter level 10, your character will now be able to make use of the Shadow Martyr feature, allowing your Echo to intercept an attack that is going to be made against another creature through the use of your character's reaction. Unlike other reactions, however, you must declare that this is going to happen before the attack roll itself is even made. Once you have, your Echo will teleport to a location that is within 5 feet of the target that is about to be attacked, and it's timed such that when the attack roll is executed, it's done against your Echo's armor class and not the initial target's armor class. If your Echo is hit and one or more hit points of damage is done, your Echo is going to be destroyed. But when you consider the fact that at this particular level, your character, specifically your Echo, has an armor class of 18. So it's going to be much harder to hit than your own character. Now, because of the specificity of the word attack in this particular feature, the reaction is only going to apply to attacks that require an attacker themselves to make the attack roll, meaning that the reaction could not be used against a saving throw. It's strictly spell, melee, ranged, or unarmed attacks or something similar that requires an attack roll to be specifically made. Additionally, because this is a reaction, your character would not be able to make use of another reaction during the same turn. And as the feature itself sets up the conditions of the reaction, you can use this without informing the DM in advance, only when you intend to make use of it. For example, the DM is now declaring that they are making an attack against so-and-so. You can call out that you're going to use your reaction to intercept that with your Echo. That's how you would execute and indicate to the DM that you're going to use this reaction. You don't, at the start of your turn, state that you're setting up a reaction to be able to react to any attack the DM is going to make. That's not how it happens. Now, unfortunately, there is a usage limitation involved, in that your character is only going to be able to use this feature once before they will need to complete a short or long rest to be able to regain that spent use. So this means that I'm going to have to go ahead and add this to our character's action sheet. I'm going to drag and drop that into place, ensure that it gets copied over into the Echo Knight grouping here, and then make sure that it has a single use. And that's really all we have to do when it comes to setting this up for use. Now, how this is actually going to work in combat is going to be like this. Let's say, for example, that the vampire is going to target, and I got to untarget the Echo Knight. Let's say that they're going to target Ape 1. Well, the first thing I want to do is declare, as a Dungeon Master, I'm attacking Ape 1. You as the player now have to declare, I am going to use a reaction to intercept that using Shadow Martyr. I don't know why I can't say that today. I've tried it 3 times so far. In any event, at this point, the Dungeon Master now has to change their target. So they're going to untarget Ape 1, and they're going to target the Echo. And this is one of the key reasons why your Echo needs to be in the combat tracker. The other reason being is that you can't really safely add your token to the Fantasy Grounds map if your character is not in this combat tracker, specifically your Echo. But that's another thing. Now you can see here that I have the Echo targeted. I'm then going to make my attack roll against it. In this particular case, that is still a hit, and it doesn't matter how much damage I'm going to do. I could literally hit them with a fist, and your Shadow Echo is now gone. So I'm going to make an attack roll. Now I know I rolled this, but I'm going to do this instead for the damage. And at this point, your Echo is now dead. It's out of the fight. You can resummon a new copy of your Echo, however, during your next turn. But if you consider the fact that during an attack roll, let's say that this particular attack could theoretically do 48 points of damage, well, the vampire essentially would have burnt that on a character that only had 1 hit point. So that's a really good way to soak out damage from a particular combat scenario. At fighter level 13, your character is going to gain their next proficiency bonus increase. Well, actually, it's technically character level 13. But in any event, you're going to want to adjust your character's AC again, specifically your Echo's AC, I should say. And you simply want to make sure that the number that is here matches that of your proficiency bonus. And all you have to do is add a +5 to it. Now your armor class should be an AC of 19. At fighter level 15, your character will gain the Reclaim Potential feature, giving your character a means to gain some temporary hit points if your Echo is destroyed because they took some damage. When your Echo is destroyed, because of that incoming damage, your character will be able to add 2d6 plus your Constitution modifier and temporary hit points to your own character, provided your character does not already have temporary hit points. Now, I'd like to point out one thing. This feature specifically states that you cannot gain any temporary hit points if you already have temporary hit points through this feature. This is actually the very first feature that I have seen that specifically states this. Now, I went through and looked at the rules in the player's handbook around temporary hit points. It does not state that you can't gain more temporary hit points to replace temporary hit points you already have as long as the new balance is higher. For example, let's say you had 3 temporary hit points. the rules do not state that if you receive an incoming buffer of 4 temporary hit points, that your temporary hit point buffer wouldn't increase to 4. This feature is explicitly stating that you cannot gain temporary hit points if you already have temporary hit points. That means this feature will not work if your character already has temporary hit points, so you must be cognizant of that. However, there is also a usage limitation on this feature as well that is going to be equal to your character's Constitution modifier before they will need to complete a long rest in order to regain any of those spent uses. Now, setting up this feature should be relatively easy. I'm going to drag and drop it into place. I'm going to copy the group so that it fits itself right into where we need it to. Now, the good news for us is that the feature is already set up. We already have the 2d6 rolls here. The Constitution configuration is set up. It's already set for temporary and applicable to your character. So we really don't have to do anything else other than making sure it's in the right group. This is also a feature that doesn't need to be copied onto your Echo because it's not something that your Echo will be doing because technically they're destroyed at the time that you're applying these temporary hit points. Now, how this is going to work during a combat situation is essentially as follows. Let's replay the previous encounter that we did where the vampire was targeting the Echo because the Echo is now intercepting an attack to somebody else. For any event, let's say that, okay, there we go. Let's say that this attack has now hit. I'm going to roll the damage against the Echo Knight. It's going to kill that Echo Knight. The very next thing that you as a player can do is apply the temporary hit points that are here on your character sheet. All you have to do is click that. It will roll the dice, and then you will see temporary hit points automatically drop onto your action sheet, specifically in the combat tracker as well. So if you look at your main character, you'll have it here, as well as here on the combat tracker. Now, on the next round, let's say that you used a bonus action to bring your Echo Knight back. And let's say that during that particular turn, they were also destroyed. At this particular point in time, even if you happen to roll a higher amount on the dice roll, so in this case we rolled 2 5s, let's say we rolled 2 6s, you would not be able to apply those temporary hit points to this particular character simply because of the specificity within the feature itself that states you cannot do so. Now, the last thing that I want to go through and set up is the number of uses. In this case, it's our Constitution modifier. So I'm going to go through and set this up to be 3 uses per day, and I'm going to indicate that I've already used 1 because I just did so. At character level 17, you will gain the last proficiency bonus increase that your character's ever going to receive. Additionally, that means that we have to adjust our armor class for the final time. So I'm going to pop this open and set this up to match our proficiency bonus of not 67, but plus 6. And now we can see that our armor class is an AC of 20 for this particular character, and that's the last time that AC is going to increase. And finally, at fighter level 18, your character is going to gain the Legion of One feature that enhances your use of the Manifest Echo feature by allowing your character to bring forth 2 echoes, not just 1. And all of a sudden, the very first thing that popped into my head was Echo 1 and Echo 2 as code names for our particular characters. And props to anyone who picks up where that comes from. Now, this does give you the means to execute any of your abilities through either Echo that you would normally make use of through your initial Echo that you had created, but not both at the same time. At this particular level, your character does have 2 extra attacks for a total of 3 right now, which means you could theoretically attack a total of 4 times. I was actually mistaken. So, what do I mean by that? Well, you yourself could execute your first attack. Then you can have an Echo execute a second attack, and then your second Echo execute your third attack. Finally, either one of those Echoes, but you have to choose one of them, can execute your fourth attack with Unleashed Incarnation as long as you have a use available. When you get to level 20 and gain your last bonus attack, that now brings your total number of attacks to 5. Now, the last thing that you do gain as a bonus to this particular feature is that if you have absolutely no uses of Unleashed Incarnation at the time that you're rolling an initiative roll, you can now regain 1 spent use. But the limitation is you can't have any active uses available. You have to have 0 uses at the time that you roll that initiative roll, which means you can come out strong and then just carry the fight through the rest of the way. But there is no usage limitation to this particular feature. The only thing I could suggest happening is that much like we created a copy of our character For our Echo, we now create another copy of that character to represent a second Echo. So you have Echo 1 and Echo 2 as your character names or as your reference names here for your two Echoes. If, however, you go to try to bring forth a third Echo, you will dispel, or dismiss, I should say, the other two Echoes that are already on the field. So you'll be back to one Echo. Now, the concept of this fighter subclass took me some time to wrap my head around, and I had to really read through many of the different areas of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount before I could really understand the concept of Dunamancy itself. And it finally made sense to me. At least I hope it has. I have to commend Matthew Mercer for the overall concept of Dunamancy and being able to provide a general, non-magical class, such as a fighter, and essentially enhance it with the overall potential possibilities that Dunamancy can unlock. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.